Welcome to a night of spine-chilling terror. Allow the darkness to wrap around you like a cold, damp shroud as we delve into the abyss of fear itself. Tonight we explore the unsettling, the unexplainable, the deeply disturbing. These are not just stories, my friends. These are nightmares woven from the fabric of our darkest fears. They will linger in your mind, claw at the edges of your thoughts, and leave you terrified to switch off the lights. Are you brave enough to continue, to peer into the abyss of horror that awaits? If you dare, then journey with me into the heart of darkness. Our first tale takes us back to a time when things were simpler, or so it seemed. Imagine, if you will, a young girl named Sophie, her eyes sparkling with innocent delight as she unwraps a birthday present. A doll, its porcelain face frozen in a disturbingly cheerful smile, its glassy eyes seemingly following her every move. The doll, a family heirloom passed down through generations, had a strange aura about it. Sophie's grandmother had always warned her about the doll, about its unsettling presence. But Sophie, young and naive, dismissed it as mere superstition. Little did she know, the doll held a dark secret, a malevolent entity trapped within its delicate porcelain shell. As the days turned into nights, Sophie began to notice strange occurrences, subtle at first but growing increasingly disturbing. A chill in the air, the feeling of being watched, the soft whisper of her name when no one was around. The doll, always positioned carefully on her bedside table, seemed to be in a different position each time she looked at it. Its glassy eyes, once filled with childish innocence, now seemed to gleam with an eerie, knowing light. One night, as Sophie lay in bed, she heard it, a soft, barely audible whisper from her bedside table. "Sophie!" The voice slithered through the darkness, her heart pounded, breath catching. Fear threatened to overwhelm her. Sophie stared at the doll on her bedside table. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "We're friends, aren't we, Sophie?" the doll hissed. Its painted lips curled into a sinister smile. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to wake up. The room grew heavy with dread. Sophie knew she was not alone. Something dark and sinister had her trapped. Sophie awoke with a gasp, her heart racing from the previous night's terror. Sunlight streamed through her window, casting eerie shadows. She thought it was just a bad dream. But then she saw the doll on the floor, its porcelain face cracked, one eye staring up. A shiver ran down her spine. This was no dream. Panic welled up inside her. She had to get rid of the doll. With trembling hands she reached for it. A sharp pain shot up her arm. She dropped the doll in fright. Two tiny red dots oozed black fluid. The doll was not content to haunt her dreams. It could now inflict real harm. Desperate, Sophie confided in her grandmother about the horrifying events of the past few nights. Her grandmother listened, her face etched with concern. "I warned you, child," her grandmother sighed. "That doll is not to be trifled with. It's a vessel for something dark and ancient." Sophie's eyes widened in terror. This was no longer just a creepy doll. This was something far more sinister. The old woman knew what had to be done. The doll needed to be returned to the earth. Together, they performed a chilling ritual. The doll's head snapped up, its eyes glowing. A cold wind howled, extinguishing the candles. An eerie silence spoke volumes about the horror that awaited them. Our next tale takes us to a creaking old Victorian house, perched precariously on a windswept hill. It had stood there for over a century, its once grand facade now faded and weathered, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the world. This house, my friends, held secrets, dark secrets buried deep within its decaying walls. Within its darkened rooms and dusty corridors, shadows danced and whispers echoed through the silence. It was a place where the veil between our world and the next was thin, where the living and the dead walked hand in hand. The new owners, a young couple oblivious to the house's sinister history, were filled with excitement and the promise of a fresh start. They were eager to make the house their own, to breathe life back into its tired bones. But they were not prepared for the horrors that awaited them in the attic. The attic, a cavernous space filled with forgotten relics and covered in a thick layer of dust, held an oppressive silence. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the grime-covered windows, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. It was a place time had forgotten, a repository of memories both cherished and cursed. The air hung heavy with the scent of decay and the faintest hint of lavender, a haunting reminder of the home's former occupants. A chill ran down the young woman's spine as she stepped inside, her hand instinctively reaching for her husband's. There was an undeniable presence in the attic, a feeling of being watched, of being judged. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind against the boarded windows sent shivers down her spine. It was as if the house itself was watching them, its unseen eyes following their every move. As the days grew shorter and the nights longer, the couple began to experience strange and unsettling phenomena. Footsteps echoed through the empty halls at night, disembodied whispers seemed to emanate from the walls, and the temperature in the attic plummeted to an unnatural chill. One night, as the grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, the couple was awakened by a blood-curdling scream. It was the young woman, her eyes wide with terror, her body trembling uncontrollably. "I saw him," she gasped, clutching at her husband's arm. "I saw him in the attic." Her husband, though sceptical at first, couldn't deny the sheer terror in his wife's eyes. Something was terribly wrong in their home, something that defied rational explanation. He knew he had to do something to protect his wife and uncover the truth behind the haunting in their attic. Armed with a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, the young man slowly ascended the stairs to the attic. The air grew colder with each step, the musty scent of decay intensifying until it was almost unbearable. He could hear his own heart pounding in his chest, a frantic rhythm against the deathly silence of the house. As he reached the top of the stairs, a cold wind slammed the attic door shut behind him. He spun around, his heart leaping into his throat, his flashlight beam dancing wildly in the darkness. And then he saw it. A shadowy figure, tall and gaunt, stood motionless at the far end of the attic. Its features were obscured by the darkness, but he could see its eyes, two glowing embers that seemed to burn with a cold, malevolent light. The figure glided towards him, its feet making no sound on the wooden floor. The young man stood frozen in terror, his flashlight falling from his grasp and plunging the attic into darkness. The last thing he heard before he fled in terror was a low, guttural growl, a sound that promised pain and suffering. Our final tale takes us deep into the heart of Victorian England, where a young woman named Eleanor inherited her grandmother's antique mirror. It was a stunning piece, with an ornate silver frame that seemed to whisper untold stories. Little did Eleanor know those whispers held a dark and terrifying truth. The mirror arrived on a dreary afternoon, shrouded in a thick fog that seemed to seep into the house along with it. As Eleanor peeled back the protective layers, a shiver ran down her spine. There was an odd coldness emanating from the mirror's surface, and an unsettling energy seemed to pulsate within its depths. Despite her unease, Eleanor found herself drawn to the mirror. It was as if the antique object held a strange allure, beckoning her closer with each passing moment. She carefully hung it above her fireplace, its presence casting an immediate chill over the once warm room. As the sun began to set, Eleanor noticed something peculiar. Her reflection in the mirror didn't quite match her own movements. It was subtle at first, a slight delay in her reflection's smile, a flicker of movement in the corner of her eye. But as the darkness deepened, so too did the unsettling discrepancies in the mirror's reflection. Nightfall brought with it a creeping dread that settled over Eleanor's heart. As she lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, her eyes constantly drawn to the shadowy reflection of the mirror in the flickering candlelight. Sleep, when it finally came, offered little respite. Eleanor was plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying visions of figures trapped within the mirror's depths, their eyes pleading for release. The whispers started subtly, like the rustling of leaves outside her window. But soon they grew louder, more insistent, seeming to emanate from the depths of the mirror itself. One night Eleanor awoke with a start to the sound of her own name being whispered. Her heart pounded in her chest as she turned towards the mirror, a cold sweat clinging to her skin. In the reflection, she could have sworn she saw a figure standing behind her, its features obscured by the darkness. Gasping, Eleanor scrambled back, her eyes wide with terror. But when she looked again, the figure was gone. Had she imagined it? A trick of the candlelight playing on her fear? Or was the cursed mirror beginning to reveal its true nature? As days turned into sleepless nights, Eleanor's fear morphed into a chilling obsession. She couldn't tear herself away from the mirror, spending hours staring into its depths, searching for answers to the mysteries it held. The whispers grew stronger, sometimes forming coherent words, taunting her with cryptic messages and promises of forbidden knowledge. One evening, as Eleanor stood before the mirror, she noticed something truly terrifying. Her reflection was no longer a perfect image of herself. Her reflection's eyes were hollow, black pits, and a sinister smile played upon its lips. The reflection reached out from the mirror, its long, pale fingers scraping against the glass, its voice a raspy whisper that sent chills down her spine. Panic surged through Eleanor as she stumbled backward, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to look away, to break free from the hypnotic gaze of her reflection, but it was no use. The mirror held her captive, its power over her growing stronger with each passing moment. The reflection beckoned her closer, its voice a seductive whisper, promising to reveal all the secrets she longed to know. Eleanor felt herself being drawn towards the mirror, her fear battling against an overwhelming sense of curiosity and a strange, unsettling familiarity. With a surge of desperation, Eleanor tore her gaze away from the mirror, breaking free from its hypnotic hold. She stumbled back, her breath catching in her throat as she realized the truth. The whispers, the visions, the sinister reflection, it was all real, and it was all connected to the cursed mirror. Driven by a primal need to escape, Eleanor ripped the mirror from the wall, ignoring the piercing screams that erupted from its depths. She had to destroy it, to break the curse before it consumed her entirely. But as she raised the heavy mirror above her head, ready to shatter it against the hearth, her reflection reached out, its grip icy cold and unrelenting. The mirror slipped from Eleanor's grasp, the sound of shattering glass echoing through the room. But as the shards fell away, Eleanor realized with a growing horror that she wasn't free. She was trapped, her soul pulled into the mirror's fractured reflection, her screams echoing silently within its depths. The cursed mirror, now shattered and scattered across the floor, remained a portal to a terrifying other world, forever reflecting the tormented soul of Eleanor, her fate a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lie hidden beneath the surface of even the most beautiful objects. And so, dear viewers, as you drift off to sleep tonight, remember the tales of the haunted doll, the ghost in the attic, and the cursed mirror. Remember that sometimes the most innocent-looking objects can harbour the darkest secrets, and the things that go bump in the night are often closer than you think. If you dare to sleep, remember, the nightmares are just beginning. Sweet dreams.